The toughest part about being a creator is the honesty required to put yourself out there. When you aren't being authentic and representing an honest version of yourself throughout your creative process, showing up to do it every time can be a challenge. It's challenging because the creative process calls us to a part within ourselves that is the most raw, unapologetic, and most importantly, unaesthetic part of being human, that when you're curating something online is easy to pretend is not the reality. When we do the work to be entertainers, especially online, we do it with the desires to live a creative life, but also in hopes that people form attachments to the honesty that we exist in through our creativity, in hopes that it allows them to be a little bit more honest with themselves. So if you're a subscriber of mine, but you haven't seen much of me, I, like the rest of the world, have been struggling to keep up. And at first I was ashamed to say it, but now I feel like it's important for me to express it. The last day of 2024, I talked about releasing and letting go, and what it feels like to enter new seasons of our life having full acceptance of our abilities, while releasing shame, the past, and our comfort zones. And as uncomfortable as it feels in the moment, we have to develop gratitude for the friction in our lives that bring us to the awareness and opportunities for growth. It's the friction that changes us for the better sometimes. The tough times force us into a vulnerability that is used as a jet fuel on the path to our desires, because the portal to every next level of our lives is through the parts of ourselves that we avoid. And since December 2024, I've felt avoidant. I've felt friction. I've felt vulnerable. And if my intention is to be of service, what good of a job would I be doing if I never talk about the raw and honest truth of the things that have been standing in my way, or how I got to those points of friction, resistance, avoidance? From December to now, I've been going toe to toe with the biggest obstacle in my life that I've been trying to release. It was the thing standing in the way of my creativity, my execution, and most importantly, what kept me from being able to see my own light. And that obstacle was my phone. Welcome to season 2 of the Raw Honast podcast, where we get real and then some. I'm your host, Jasmin.siri, and every week I will speak on topics that align with reprogramming the subconscious mind. I share my experiences and discuss how I navigate life consciously so we can reach higher heights and deeper dimensions of the mind to reach our goals from a healed and open place together. So, let's get started. Social media, the internet, and mindless scrolling were my biggest distraction. It was this distraction and overstimulation that led me to form resistance in the small tasks that make my goals achievable. And ultimately, all of these bad habits were a form of self-betrayal and abandonment. If you're a person that has ever experienced abandonment wounds, instead of looking outward at all of the ways your relationships with others have contributed to your abandonment, assess the relationship that you're having with yourself by asking, how are you pouring into you? For example, when you get home from work after a long day, what is the first thing you do? For me, I scrolled. Sometimes I wouldn't even make it into the house. I would sit in my car and scroll on my phone for maybe an hour as a form of decompressing, and then get in the house and do the bare minimum of self-care. I'd shower, maybe eat, and then look to my partner to fulfill a void that I wasn't even doing a good job at fulfilling myself. And for any hardworking individual out there that never feels they're truly satisfied, never feels that they get the support they need or the nurturing they truly deserve for the lifestyle that they work so hard in, what example are you setting for the ways that you need to be filled by the way that you fill yourself? This trickled into my creative process. It felt like I was an anxiously attached person with an avoidant relationship with myself when it came to my creative discipline and the time needed to keep creativity flowing. And as I took a step back to closely observe the so-called avoidance in my life, I saw them much more clearly. It was finally clear to me that an avoidance nature and desire for distance does not equate to a lack of care as much as it can look and feel like it on the surface. And for my creative ideas, I saw how easy it was for me to take on this avoidant role in my creative process, take the back seat, and how much I developed excuses and grace for myself as to why certain things could not be touched. Doing all of that while I spared little to no grace for the avoidance that claimed to be present in my life. The avoidant part in me believed that detaching from this desperate need to be successful or perfect or to always work kept me in my creative power, but there was an action that needed to take place that was not happening. And in order to see it, I had to become it. And after becoming it, I'm now in my power enough to say, love and passion for anything requires action, may it be big or small. Isn't that the issue with the avoidance that we love? It's not their hearts that we misunderstand. It's their inability to take action in collaboration with their hearts, to move in a way that make others feel they're valued. And that's the thing that drives our anxiety up the roof. And I'm not making excuses for the avoidance out there. I just see it a little clearer, more clear than I ever have before. And I felt it should be expressed in hopes that someone who could probably identify with this relationship with their self could maybe see things a little bit differently as well. It wasn't until operating in that mindset of detachment that I realized that it's not an idea that's helpful all the time. You know, there's always this thing of detaching from the things that you want to stay in your power to maybe attract it closer to you. But I think there's so many things that could happen when you're detaching from something for someone like myself, because I like to overthink. And I left too much space open to overthink. And so much so that I lost this willpower to just do the hard things anyway. I wanted to move to a path with least resistance, but I had to realize that when you're doing something that you're passionate about, you will experience the friction of growing pains through that. And instead of pivoting outward and away from it, it's something that you have to embrace and walk through. And I had to realize and have this full circle moment and realize how wild it was that the things that I love to do made me feel anxious. And I wanted to get back to it, but I ended up setting all of these parameters to make it absolutely perfect for me. And I ended up not doing it anyway. And I just could not get a hold of it other than stopping. I just had to completely stop. I needed a month just to fully be and exist in the version of myself that maybe was new, that had learned so much from all of the work that I did in that year before. And also, I just needed to maybe exist a little bit more in the version of myself that I needed to release so I can get so sick and tired of it. I move onward and upward away from it. And in order to release it, I needed to embrace it and recognize that it is all normal and a part of the creative process. The pitfalls, the stagnancies, the super high highs. Sometimes we get off track and we're in need of a reboot. So that maybe the next time we take action, our intentions are more clear, especially if throughout the year before, your intentions may have changed. I think we have to take full control of our minds again and make conscious decisions on the path forward. And this is me laying it all down so that I can do that for myself. So, as much as I didn't want to do it, I guess it's time I set my pride aside to say that maybe our moms were right. Maybe it is those goddamn phones. I'm making an episode that could give someone the right type of inspiration to move past the habit of scrolling before it's too late, before more time gets wasted. So here's how to actually stop scrolling from someone who has wasted a lot of time doing it. Now, every mindless scrolling or brain rot video or episode you will see will give you a stat and a healthy habit to counter the bad one. But my intention with this episode today is to crack down to the root of why you scroll in the first place. I don't want you to just do as I say, as if I have all the answers, because I don't. I just hope that you have an opportunity to get to know yourself more so that you find the answers within yourself. If scrolling is used as an escape in your life, I hope you ask yourself, why are you living in a world you often desire to escape from? What is the urge to scroll really trying to say? If not here in the present moment, where else would you rather be? And when you're honest with yourself about where that place is or why you're ignoring yourself to scroll, your next steps will be so much more clear. And it'll help you get closer to the changes that you need to make in your lifestyle to become more of a vibrational match of something that maybe you feel less likely to want to escape from. Because if we say every minute is an opportunity to walk closer in the direction of our heart's desires, but we are grounded enough to accept that not every moment needs to be used for work, where's our common ground? How can you meet yourself in the middle and give yourself grace? Escaping to social media to scroll all of our time away doesn't bring us any closer to our desires. But if we define our intentions, maybe we will be able to build a structure around the amount of time that we're using, and it will give us a light on our way. Because let's face it, we live in a society where we will probably never stop scrolling, but we will also never get the time back either. So let's start exactly where we are. And if you feel compelled, grab a journal and maybe use this encounter that I'm having with myself as a way for you to get to know yourself a little better. And with the questions that I ask myself, ask it to yourself and see what arises if you have been having an issue with social media. So that although we may have fallen into distractions, we don't stay there. I'd say that my feelings towards technology has been positively neutral. When I think of technology, it's like I know our bodies aren't supposed to be living with it, but we obviously can't survive without it. Or can we? I think we should be, but the internet is changing people's lives in such positive ways. I don't necessarily see what's wrong with it. If technology were not a thing, if I was not living in an era where technology was a valued resource, my passion to be a speaker and creator would not exist either. I'm at a crossroads because the dependency to technology is a little creepy, I'm not even gonna lie. But I see how far we've come in our relationship with technology, and I feel proud of it. Aren't we as humans meant to evolve? Isn't it a part of our existence? How are we supposed to be potentially a space-bearing race without this messy part of the integration process that we have with technology right now? I think there's this renaissance of creativity, technology, and knowledge at our disposal, and as much as it may be rotting my brain and turning my attention span to dust, I can't stop scrolling because I'm too busy being inspired by it. So, I was scrolling, and I was loving it. But I was so comfortable indulging in the mindless scrolling of good and maybe not so good entertainment on TikTok and Instagram that using my own mind to create the script that makes my podcast channel what it is felt more and more uncomfortable the closer I stayed away from it. When I found out that TikTok was coming to an end, all those weeks ago, I felt great about it because I knew how much I was addicted to it. I knew I wasn't powerful enough to cut the habit on my own. And we're into the future, and obviously that's not happening. And I felt like this is just an opportunity for me to do the work. And when you take your power back from this and find more control, more discipline in your habits and your focus and your routine, you will be unstoppable. I can't necessarily delete TikTok because it's a good source of news and information for me, but I've trained myself to not indulge so much. This spell of distraction is just so common, especially in 2025, but I'll admit it felt much deeper than just short form entertainment or a time pass between tasks. The way that it chipped away at my time felt like it was a symptom to something happening a lot deeper inside of me. And that's where I'm going today. And I encourage you to do the same. So here are the facts. 1, I was so inspired by all of the creative things that I was seeing that I lost sight of my own creative potential and my own strengths. That's one of the problems that access to the internet has. You have the ability to see so many levels of execution, from amateur to the greatest of the great, that you get so wrapped up in what you see that your creative expression grows into a competition more than it could be an honest encounter with yourself. And because of the pace of the internet, I was afraid that although I had done a lot, I was missing an opportunity every day I wasted not working on an episode. And I started to feel anxious and shame. And 2, I grew envy by the sight of ways other people were able to express themselves that were outside of my abilities and outside of my creative freedoms, because all of the time I spent working my 2 jobs and just being able to exist in my own life. And when this happens, whether that competition is with yourself or some random that doesn't even know you exist, it takes you out of your flow. Often in creative spaces, we chase after this elevated expression of our own unique voice, and sometimes that thing we chase is a version of someone else's normal. It never fully becomes our own until we balance the scale of internal and external inspiration. I think someone should open the window to say that it's okay to be inspired. Yes, some person from a place you've never been expresses themselves in a way that makes you feel something, and it's special. And I think we feel guilty for being inspired sometimes. We all want to be the greatest artist. The ego wants to always be first and to be innovative. And if you make that the center of your motivation, it becomes something else. And how far can you really go with that being the power motivating your stride? Often when the feeling of being inspired is so new, you don't know what to do with the energy, but try to emulate it so that others have the blessing of experiencing that same exact feeling that you had when you first encountered whatever that person did. And the intention is good, but again, the ego makes it something else, because in that moment of wanting to emulate a person's creative signature, we forget that we already have that capability with just doing what resonates with our own heart, with our own journey and experience, and having an honest testimony. Although it is good to take things that you enjoy and you feel that you're being exposed to, I think it's so important to find the difference between that and owning your own voice and making your own expression, and going through the process of developing what that is. When you're on YouTube and you want to be a creator in this space, or you're making podcasts, I think a lot of people are just trying to see what works and matching that and trying to find ways that they can do it and make it their own. And it will take weeks, maybe months, to really define what that is. When it comes down to the structure of my episodes, it took me a while to kind of figure out how to make it my own. I didn't know what everyone else was doing. All I knew was what felt right for me and how I wanted to best tell the stories that I wanted to tell. And then from there, I developed a structure that became my podcast and the episodes that I create. But if I didn't stop watching everyone else and just continue to make mistakes and do it every week for an entire year, I probably wouldn't be so comfortable in doing what I do now. But know that also you are enough. And lastly, until now, until this very moment where I was able to articulate what was going on, I gaslit myself into believing that the issue that I had with scrolling on social media was not a problem. It's so funny, the lies we tell ourselves to exist more comfortably in certain emotions that serve our delusion. Not even taking into account that it's something we have the ability to change. So for me, I had to stop making excuses for it. I was scrolling, I was sick, I get it. Not all the time, but sometimes while I was doing it, I was comparing myself to strangers. But I wasn't considering the fact that while all of this was going on and all of this was happening, the passion that I had to create never went away. It was like I was in a cage of my own mind, wanting to do but stuck in the consuming because of the endorphins that I was receiving from all of it. So I needed to get back to myself, and hopefully with this video is a representation of me doing that. I was carrying so much in my hand with so little time to do it all. I had to remove it. I needed to realize that carrying so much on my plate is not really worth it if I can't eat it all. You know, if I had 2 jobs and I was working to make ends meet, but I wasn't able to get to this and really invest the time, energy, and emotions to express myself, it wasn't worth it. So I had to make a sacrifice. I hope this video is a representation that even when you fall off, even when you take a step back, you can always return back to what is most important to you. And to me, it was using my voice, and that was literally the only thing. It was like, yes, I had anxiety towards coming back because of how long I went away, but the urge to have something to say never went away, and I think that's the most important thing. In any creative project, whatever medium you choose, some call it an opportunity to share a piece of yourself with the world, right? But when the artist spends more of their time in the creative process than they will ever do indulging in what they create, it's obvious to me that the most important and the most motivation comes from that encounter that you're having with yourself in the moment of creating whatever it is you want people to experience. When people see what we produce and feel something, what they feel is just a mirror to the encounter that we had with ourselves. And that's what's so fascinating to me. And I think that's why I continue to create. And it's also why the phone and social media, if not controlled, can be such an enemy to the creative process, because all of these platforms, all of the things that we indulge in, if those are tools to connect outward with the world around us and build community, the creative process is something that forces us inward to connect within ourselves. And if we're constantly reaching outward to be inspired, when do we find the time to connect within ourselves to potentially inspire others? My escapism went hand in hand with my relationship with time. When there was an important moment in my life that required me to show it more, because there was already a lifestyle that I was existing in that required so much of me. In an attempt to gain back my power of my own time and how I used it in doing what I wanted to do, I just chose to waste it. Because scrolling on social media, I could control that. Or so I thought. And as I'm recalling back on that time, maybe I made a choice to waste so much time because I wasn't brave enough or in my faith to see that there was something in my life I needed to remove that was keeping me away from the urge to come back to myself. This is a sign of survival mode that often goes unnoticed. Maybe you're working to make ends meet in a way that keeps you away from your passions. The sacrifice that comes with sustaining a dream is a lot. You don't realize it, but having a dream is also a full-time job. It's 100% at the forefront of your mind. So anytime your attention is taken elsewhere, it depletes you. Well, it depletes me. And this caused my mind to work nonstop. But through it all, I never stopped scrolling, which is the funny thing. Scrolling was a part of my life in ways I'm ashamed to say. I didn't prioritize strategizing my next step, my next project, but somehow I always found time to scroll. This lack of time used wisely, this lack of discipline made me irritable. And it felt my mind was going at a pace that my body could not follow. The only thing that could match the pace of my mind was the internet. It was natural for me to turn my attention to social media, where for a moment the pace of my unhinged thoughts made sense. It's like, I'm growing older, and I blinked and I became 30, and in a way, scrolling and laughing at the content I see makes me feel young. It's like when I'm scrolling, I'm taken back to a time in my life where life just wasn't so serious. Every minute of my life wasn't as crucial or required something of me, and sometimes I miss that. I use social media to distract me from my work life being out of balance, my relationships suffering from my lack of presence in them. And instead of processing it all in the way that I am now, I just scrolled because watching a funny dog, a makeup routine, or my favorite creator's luxury lifestyle made me feel away from myself. It made me feel good. Now that I'm reaching this point of awareness and I'm able to talk about it, I think my old ways of overworking my mind to write, edit, post every week, I'm realizing that it did not serve me as much as I thought it did. I was suffering from escapism in a world that I sacrificed so much to create and at a pace that I could not stop. It was like I was trying to create a wave, and then once I realized the wave was too high, I was getting swallowed by it. And it all required me to work more and at a pace that I could not keep up with. I think overall, I was escaping to social media because I wasn't fully ready to embody the change that was happening within me and the pace of the amount of work I needed to do to keep up with the change, especially when it came to YouTube. My comfort zone and the workflow needed to change to align with not only what was happening in me, but with the lifestyle that I had. It's either I honor my growth and make something I'm truly proud of, or do this repetitive, make a video that doesn't really mean anything, but I'm pushing the algorithm. It's just all of those things were not helping my growth, but I needed to keep it the same in order to maybe move forward, and none of it felt right, so I just didn't do it at all. And hopefully now that I'm back with more clarity, I'll make things more exciting. I'll be able to express my creativity in much more fun and exciting ways, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Making videos, I love it. I love videography. I love that I like someone and love someone that is also interested in the same thing as me, and we try to do the best that we can at just kind of challenging ourselves to do more things and more exciting creative things. And I think it's a positive change, but it's so hard and so challenging that it's a lot. So let's just see where it goes. It was time to fill my cup, change my routine, and honor my vessel. For anyone experiencing a social media burnout, it is your body telling you that it is time for love. And if you ignore that, it will be no one's fault but your own. I had to stop myself and say, I'm human. I am not a machine. And because I am a human, I'm growing, and these are the growing pains. It's not normal for my brain to be processing so many things in such a short window of time. I should be processing life at nature's pace without the instant gratification given to us by technology. You know, we think our social media presence or our digital footprint is more important than the marks we leave in the real world and in people's lives. We are nature. And I honestly find the most inspiration for the topics of my episodes in my natural day-to-day life. You know, I do make videos, but I'm a fitness instructor and I'm a teacher and I work and I have issues sometimes and things are not perfect and I make mistakes, and it's that part of my life that gives me the resource to pull from, and if I stop wanting to exist in that because I'm scrolling online and trying to be in the know of what social media is, I miss the downloads in the present moment. And another thing I started to ask myself is, why do I feel like checking in on social media to see what other people have going on is any more important than what's happening in the present moment? It's like, why waste my moment scanning in on someone else's curated whatever? And when I thought of it that way, the act felt even more ridiculous and like a little bit sick. I feel like the world is pushing closer and closer to surveillance, and it's moving at a pace so fast that we're not even seeing it because we're too busy watching it like everyone else. And it's starting to turn me off. I don't know. I think sometimes we need those realizations to wake us up. Like as a creator, people that do vlogs, although I think vlogs are amazing, you don't realize it, but I feel for my favorite YouTubers that make vlogs because they have to kind of curate these moments that are separate from their real lives in a way. Otherwise, it's too much, it's too invasive, and they have to keep what's important to them sacred. And then I see creators that are more like the filmmaker space and that just create these little topics and they make things in alignment with that's outside of their personal life. And I was like, okay, that's something that I really enjoy. It's like I wish there was a way to bridge the gaps. You know, I don't know, it's interesting. Everything is possible. When you want to be a creator for your life's work, it's hard to say if social media is good or bad when it's your passion to film, edit, and post. It's like an addiction to create your own world, community, and opportunity that never feels wrong. But for anyone that desires to grow on social media, if you're deep in the journey with more to do, more to post, more to say, it's so easy to get lost in the sauce. I think that's why my addiction to social media carried on for so long, because it's hard for you to find that fine line between strategically staying present and planning and on top of the platforms you wish to thrive in and overly consuming. When you have to watch the comments and the reels and the trending sounds, it feels productive. But when you're in the ocean like the internet, there's always going to be a song and a trending topic and a funny occurrence, so it will never end. You have to be in control enough to stop it. And I think lately, I just say what I want, or when I have something to say, I will say it, and then I have to completely log out. If you're like me, you have a passion and a side hustle that you want to nurture to make it fully your career. And when people interact with what you create, it creates more pressure because it's so important to you. But you kind of have to not necessarily detach yourself from the creative process like I did, but detach yourself from the gratification of people perceiving it positively or negatively, because that's not really important. If you're not grounded or mindful about what's important to you, you can start to seek validation in the audience and grow addicted to the feeling of being perceived more than the natural desire that you have to express what's in your heart. And this can be a total mental health setback. So please, trust me when I say this. I want you to get to where you're going without arriving to the result of all of your hard work and taking it all for granted because of what the path has done to your self-image and your self-esteem because of social media. So, how do we continue on this digital path while still maintaining our sanity and our balance? I think the clearest answer to that is whatever your body is telling you at the time. And when I asked myself this question, here are a couple things I learned about myself. I enjoy watching videos. I enjoy making things and developing new skills as a creator. But when I changed my intention to it becoming a full-time thing and a total career change, I still loved it, but the pressure of what it meant for me and its importance started to trickle into the moving parts of what I produced, and it felt like work 99.8% of the time. And newsflash, right? This is a job. Sometimes the things we love go hand in hand with the growing pains that arise while continuing with it. The truth is, we won't like doing the things that we love to do 100% of the time, but that doesn't make it any less worthy of being a part of our journey. So instead of trying to escape that feeling, which is inevitable, I needed to become more mindful when the urge to scroll started to arise and how it affected my work-life balance. If every time I grew anxious about my workload, I scrolled, I needed to set a controlled schedule for when my phone was able to scroll, period. And when I say that, it sounds like some parental advisory or a child lock on my phone. And you know what? That's exactly what it is. And in order for me to get a hold of my habits, that's what I'm willing to do. If I come home and I have to put my phone on the bar instead of near me on the couch while I'm sitting down or having a conversation, That's the only way that I'll actually make a change so that I can even see if it'll make me feel better. Otherwise, I move too fast in the moment and I'm always trickling back to those bad habits. What can I say? I'm a different woman now, maybe a lot more honest, and so much more myself that I know what works for me and what does not. My flow of creativity now is just a representation of that. And instead of questioning it and feeling shame for not having the same roaring flame of passion that I had before, it took a while, but I needed to see that even the smallest flame can light the way. And what would I prefer, right? This large torch of a flame that is uncontrollable and too much to carry? Or this consistent small light that is controlled enough for me to nurture it and carry through the entirety of my journey as a creator? After taking a step back, setting more intentions, and having more clarity, sometimes we assume that when we return back to our tasks, we'll still exist in the same momentum that we had before. And that's just not the case. Because let's just be real. Sometimes the next thing that we create won't be the greatest thing the world has ever seen, right? But it's still worthy of being shared. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is honor your mind when it's telling you that there is too much to carry. At some point, the desires of our hearts will get overwhelming, but it should never be so much that you abandon it completely. And if that is happening, reassess, reconnect with yourself, and set new intentions so you can prioritize your mind enough not to give it what it wants, especially if that thing is mindless scrolling. It's putting your passion and your truth over your emotions to prioritize, this longevity that you want to have. I think social media can be a tool and a torture, a source of inspiration and escapism. What's more important is your intention and the level of discipline that you have within yourself to make the outcome what you want it to be. The power is yours. It always has been. What are you going to do with it? Thank you all so much for making it to this far, into the first episode of season 2 of the Raw Honast podcast. You can listen to this audio on Apple and Spotify podcasts at the Raw Honast with Jasmin.siri. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at jasmin.siri, and I will see you guys in my next one. Love you.